They say history remembers kings, masters, and powerful families. But history often forgets the people whose blood quietly built those empires. This story begins not with name carved in stone, but with a whisper buried deep in time. In a quiet corner of a vast estate, surrounded by land that stretched farther than the eye could see, lived a man the world knew only as a slave. No surname, no legacy, no recorded past, just a body owned by another family, and a life meant to serve. Yet behind closed doors, behind locked documents and unspoken glances, there was something terribly wrong with this simple story, because this slave carried something no one expected, something dangerous, something powerful. He shared blood with the master's family, not metaphorical blood, not symbolic loyalty, real blood, the kind that ties generations together and destroys reputations if revealed. For decades, this truth was buried, hidden behind silence, fear, and carefully crafted lies. Those who knew chose to forget. Those who suspected were silenced. And those who asked questions disappeared from the records. This is not a story of rebellion or escape. This is a story of identity stolen at birth, of bloodlines erased, of a secret so dark that an entire family reshaped history to keep it hidden. As we go deeper, you'll discover how a single child born into chains carried the same blood as those who held the whip, how power rewrote truth, and how one secret survived decades, waiting to be exposed. But before we reveal how this happened, we must first understand the world he was born into, a world where blood meant everything, and status meant more than humanity. Because once you understand that world, you'll realize why the secret could never be allowed to come out. Pause. And why, even today, its echoes are still dangerous. Long before the secret was born, there was a family, a name spoken with respect by some and fear by others. They were not royalty by crown, but by control. Their land stretched across valleys and rivers. Their wealth came from generations of ownership, of soil, of crops, and of human lives. In that era, power did not need to announce itself. It lived in ledgers, contracts, and bloodlines. And the master's family had all three. Every child born into that house was documented, celebrated, and prepared to inherit authority. Lineage mattered more than morality. The purity of blood was everything. It determined who ruled and who served. Slaves were not considered people in this system. They were assets, numbers on paper, replaceable bodies meant to obey without question. The master himself was known as a respectable man in public, well-dressed, soft-spoken, a pillar of the community. But behind the walls of the estate, a different truth existed, one that never made it into church records or family journals, one that revealed how absolute power corrupts without consequence. Servant quarters sat far from the main house. Children born there were rarely recorded by name. Their lives began in silence and often ended the same way. And yet, within this rigid world of hierarchy and control, one line was crossed, a line so dangerous that it threatened the very foundation of the family's legacy. Because, in a system obsessed with blood purity, someone in power allowed blood to mix. And when that happened, the truth could not be erased, only buried. That buried truth would soon be born into chains. Before the secret had a face, before it had a name, there was a woman no history book ever mentioned. She was born into bondage, raised on the same land she would never own. Her world was small, fields, kitchens, and long nights that never truly ended. She learned early that silence was survival. The master's family knew her as obedient, reliable, invisible, but invisibility did not protect her. Power in that house moved without permission, and refusal was not an option. What happened between her and the master was never written down, because writing it would mean admitting guilt, and guilt did not exist for men like him. Whether it began with force, manipulation, or quiet coercion, no one dared to ask. The result, however, could not be denied. A child was coming, for a woman in her position. Pregnancy was not a miracle. It was a sentence. Whispers spread among the servants. Eyes lowered. Doors closed a little faster. Everyone noticed the timing, the resemblance no one wanted to acknowledge, and the fear that followed. Because if the child carried the master's blood, it was not just scandal. It was a threat, a threat to inheritance, to reputation, to everything the family had built. When the baby was born, no celebration followed, no record in the family Bible, no acknowledgement of lineage. Only one order was given, clear and final. The child would be raised as a slave, and the truth of his blood would die with her. The night the child was born, the estate was unusually quiet. No bells rang. No announcements were made. In the servant quarters, a single oil lamp burned low as the woman cried out in pain. Other slaves stood nearby, afraid to help too much, and afraid not to help at all. When the baby finally arrived, the room fell silent, because even in the dim light, the truth was visible. The child's skin tone, his features, the shape of his eyes, they did not fully belong to the world he had been born into. There was no denying it. He looked like the master's family. A midwife crossed herself. Another woman turned away, whispering a prayer. They all understood what this meant. By morning, the master had been informed. He did not come to see the child. He did not ask to hold him. Instead, he gave instructions through others. No name connected to the family. No mention in official records. No special treatment that might raise suspicion. The baby would live, but only as a slave. From the very beginning, the child existed between two worlds, too close to power to be safe, too far from it to be protected. As he grew, the danger did not fade. It multiplied. Every smile that resembled the master, every habit he shared with the family's sons, every passing year increased the risk, because secrets like this do not stay buried easily. They surface in faces, in gestures, in blood, and one day someone would notice, or so they believed. As the boy grew, the secret grew with him. By the age of 5, the whispers had returned, not loud enough to reach the main house, but sharp enough to cut through the servant quarters. He walked like the master's sons, held his head the same way. Even his laugh carried a familiar sound that made people uncomfortable. Some servants avoided him. Others watched him with quiet fear, because resemblance in a place like this was not a blessing. It was a warning. The master noticed too. Whenever the boy passed through the yard, conversation stopped. Eyes followed him, and more than once, the master turned away quickly, as if seeing his own reflection in chains was too much to bear. To protect the secret, the family did what powerful families always do. They controlled the narrative. The boy was assigned harder labor than others his age, kept away from a main house, punished more harshly for smaller mistakes. Not because he was disobedient, but because he was visible. His mother understood this better than anyone. She warned him never to speak unless spoken to, never to look the master in the eyes, never to ask questions about his father. But children notice things adults try to hide. He noticed the way people stared, the way the master's wife avoided him, the way the family's sons glanced at him with confusion, as if looking at a distorted mirror. And slowly, a dangerous question began forming in his mind. Why do I look like them? The mother lived in constant fear. Every morning she woke up wondering if that would be the day the secret destroyed them both. In a world where lives could be taken quietly, resemblance was evidence, and evidence was dangerous. She watched her son closely, too closely. When he spoke, she hushed him. When he asked questions, she changed the subject. When he laughed too freely, she pulled him aside, not out of cruelty, but out of terror. At night, when the estate finally slept, she told him stories, not of fathers or family names, but of survival. She taught him how to lower his gaze, how to soften his voice, how to disappear in plain sight, because disappearing was the only way to stay alive. She never told him the truth, not because she didn't want to, but because saying it out loud felt like inviting death into the room. Other slaves began to notice her fear. Some pitied her, some resented her, and some feared that her child's existence would bring punishment to everyone. The master's wife noticed too. She said nothing, but her silence was colder than anger. In that house, women like her understood exactly what had happened, and they knew who would pay the price. The boy, unaware of the full truth, only felt one thing clearly. He was different, and difference, in that world, was never forgiven. The master's wife never raised her voice. She never needed to. Her power lived in looks that lingered too long, and decisions made quietly behind closed doors. She had noticed a child the moment he began to resemble her husband's sons, not because others pointed it out, but because she knew exactly what betrayal looked like. In her world, reputation was survival, and scandal was a slow death. She did not confront the master. Men like him were never truly confronted. Instead, she focused on control. The child was reassigned away from the house. His mother's duties were changed without explanation. Small punishments were delivered through others, never directly, to outsiders. It looked like routine discipline. Inside the house, it was a message. This child will never belong. The wife watched him from a distance, studying his face as if trying to erase it from memory. Every similarity was an insult. Every resemblance was proof of humiliation she could never publicly acknowledge. And yet, she could not kill him. Not openly, not without questions. So she chose something worse. She erased him. No education, no skills beyond hard labor, no path that might lift him above his assigned place. If the blood could not be undone, then the future would be destroyed instead. And still, the secret lived. The master's sons grew up unaware of the full truth. But ignorance has limits. As they reached adolescence, something became impossible to ignore. The slave boy looked like them, not in a distant way, not in a coincidence. In the same brow, the same jawline, the same expressions that surfaced without thought. At first, they joked about it. Then they denied it. Then they stopped laughing altogether. One of them once asked the master directly, half in jest. The question was never answered. Instead, it was punished. From that moment on, the sons understood one thing clearly. This was not a subject to be explored. Their confusion turned into discomfort into resentment, because the boy represented something they could not name, but deeply feared. If blood made them heirs, then what did shared blood make him? They avoided him in public, mocked him in private, and sometimes, when no one was watching, they tested him, not to prove he was weaker, but to reassure themselves that he was still beneath them. The secret had now reached a new generation, and with it, a new danger by the time he turned 10. The boy began to notice patterns that others try to hide. The stares, the whispers, the small, meaningful glances between adults when he entered a room. He could not yet name it, but he felt the weight of his difference pressing down on him every day. He noticed how the master's sons carried themselves with confidence, how they spoke without fear, and how the family's adults hesitated whenever he acted like them, even in small, unconscious ways. Sometimes he would catch the master's wife watching him, her eyes cold and calculating. Other times, he would hear a servant mutter warnings under their breath. Don't speak too much. Don't laugh like him. Don't even breathe like him. A seed of fear and confusion grew inside him. Why did they treat him like this? Why did he feel a pull towards something he could not reach? At night, he would lie awake, questioning everything. His mother's soft reassurances could only go so far. Even she could not fully explain why he was different, why the world seemed both familiar and forbidden. And then, little by little, he began to understand. He saw his own face reflected in the eyes of the master's sons. The resemblance was undeniable. The truth was creeping in, and with that realization came a new fear, that this secret could ruin everything for him, and for everyone he loved. The master was a man who never spoke unnecessarily. His presence alone carried weight, fear, and authority. One afternoon, the boy accidentally mirrored the master's posture, a small gesture, barely noticeable. But to those who knew, it was a declaration, a sign that the child carried something forbidden. The master called him into the study. No words of comfort, no acknowledgement of innocence, just a quiet, piercing gaze that seemed to read every thought. He asked questions about the boy's day, his tone polite, almost casual, but the subtext was deadly clear. Do you know who you are? Do you understand where you belong? The boy's heart raced. He answered carefully, every word measured, every gesture restrained. One misstep could reveal too much. One slip could change his life forever. The master then tested him further. He asked him to perform tasks not meant for a child. challenging, impossible tasks that would break others, but the boy, clever and cautious, completed them. For a moment, the master's eyes softened, not with affection, but with recognition. He had seen himself in the child, a reflection that should not exist. After the session, the boy left the study shaken, but with a strange understanding. His life was not his own, and yet he had survived a test that many would fail. The danger had become personal, and the secret he carried was no longer just hidden from the world. It was being watched as the boy entered his teenage years. The truth became impossible to hide. His body grew stronger, his mind sharper, and his mannerisms increasingly mirrored the master's family. Even among the adult slaves, he stood out, not for rebellion, but for instinct and intelligence. He learned quickly, anticipating work orders, reading moods, and understanding rules faster than anyone else. The master's sons began to notice more openly. At first, they were curious, then wary, and finally, silent tension replaced any pretense of childhood innocence. In the main house, servants whisper behind closed doors. The boy, he moves like the master. The boy, he thinks like the master's sons. Every resemblance was a risk, every skill a potential threat. The mother watched with growing anxiety. Her careful lessons on silence and invisibility were no longer enough. She knew that if the family ever connected the dots, the consequences could be fatal, not just for her son, but for herself. The master, however, observed quietly. He made subtle tests, pushing the boy to display cunning judgment and resilience. Every success was a double-edged sword, proof of the boy's bloodline, and proof of the danger that lineage represented. By the age of 16, the boy's presence had become a living reminder of a secret that could no longer be ignored. He was growing into a man the family feared, and that fear would shape the next chapter of his life. By the time the boy was 16, the family's carefully controlled world began to crack. Visitors to the estate, merchants, neighbors, and distant relatives started to notice him. Whispers followed him wherever he went. "He looks like the master's son," they murmured behind closed doors. Small observations, seemingly innocent, but deadly in their implications. The master's wife grew colder with each remark. She paced the halls at night, furious that the secret might escape unnoticed. Her husband's calm exterior hid growing tension. Even a single comment could unravel decades of careful concealment. The boy's resemblance became a puzzle no one dared speak of aloud. Servants began to treat him differently, some with envy, others with fear. The family realized that the boy was no longer invisible. He was a living symbol of everything they had worked to hide. Documents, letters, and ledgers were checked and rewritten. Every interaction scrutinized. The family took measures to control what outsiders saw, from arranging the boy's duties to limiting his visibility in public spaces. And yet, no matter what they did, the boy's presence spoke louder than any rule. Every glance from a visitor, every whispered comment, reminded them of a truth they could not erase. It was no longer just a secret. It was a ticking time bomb. The boy could feel the weight of eyes on him long before anyone spoke. Every whispered conversation, every sudden silence, became a puzzle he was desperate to solve. Questions filled his mind, but answers were scarce. Small hints surfaced over time. A servant's accidental slip, a look too long between the master and his mother, an old family letter left carelessly on a desk. Moments that seemed insignificant to others became pieces of a growing picture. At first, he tried to ignore it. He reminded himself he was just a slave. He belonged in the fields, not in the house. But the resemblance, the shared gestures, the same stubborn way of thinking, refused to be ignored. He started observing the family more closely, watching their habits, noticing the similarities that others feared to see. Every shared smile, every familiar posture made his heart pound with forbidden curiosity. One day, he asked a servant cautiously about his father. The answer was abrupt, evasive, and laced with warning. "Don't ask questions you don't want answered." The words only fueled his curiosity. He realized that his blood carried a secret worth hiding, a secret that, if discovered, could change everything for him and everyone around him. From that moment, a quiet determination grew inside him. He would uncover the truth, no matter the danger it be. Why now? The boy had learned one vital lesson. Knowledge was dangerous, but ignorance was deadly. If he was ever to understand who he truly was, he would have to take risks no one dared to take. He began observing the family in secret. Every glance, every conversation, every gesture was carefully noted. Late at night, he memorized letters and documents left unattended, piecing together hints that adults assumed he could not understand. Each discovery brought more questions than answers. Whispers of family arrangements, references to unknown children, and mentions of debts owed. They all hinted at a past carefully concealed. The risk was constant. One wrong move could expose him to punishment, or worse. Slaves who asked too many questions disappeared from the estate records without explanation. He knew that curiosity could be fatal, but he could not stop. The resemblance, the forbidden knowledge pulsing in his veins, demanded answers. Every step closer to the truth increases tension and fear, yet the boy's determination grew stronger than any threat. It was a dangerous game, one that balanced on the edge of discovery and death. And the deeper he went, the more the shadows of the master's family seemed to watch him, as if aware that he was getting too close. One rainy evening, when the estate was quieter than usual, the boy found it, a small bundle of papers, hidden behind a loose brick in the study, yellow with age, fragile to the touch, but carrying a weight heavier than any chains. He unfolded them slowly, heart pounding with fear and anticipation. The documents contained records of births, ledgers of property, and, most shockingly, references to a child born out of sight, intentionally left unrecorded in family history. The handwriting was unmistakable. The dates aligned with his birth. The descriptions matched him perfectly. For the first time, he held undeniable proof. Not rumors, not whispers, not accidental resemblance. His blood was the same as the master's family. The secret they had buried for decades was now in his hands. Fear flooded him. Anger burned inside him, and a painful clarity settled in. His life had been defined by lies, control, and silence. He was the living evidence of a hidden truth that could shatter the family's carefully constructed world. The boy realized something else. Possession of this knowledge gave him power. Power he had never been allowed to wield. And with that power came danger unlike anything he had ever faced. By the time the boy discovered the documents, the atmosphere of the estate had shifted. It was subtle at first, glances that lingered too long, hushed conversations abruptly ending when he entered a room. The master's family, accustomed to controlling everything, now felt the edges of that control slipping. The master himself became quieter, observing the boy with sharp, calculating eyes. The wife, cold and meticulous, ensured that nothing he did went unnoticed. Even the son seemed tense, their laughter forced, their gestures cautious. Whispers spread among the servants. Some claimed the boy had been seen sneaking into the study. Others speculated about letters and documents that were never meant to be found. The family's paranoia grew with every passing day. The realization was terrifying. Someone had discovered the truth, and that someone was alive, breathing, growing stronger with every secret uncovered. Orders were given to tighten supervision. The boy's movements were tracked, his interactions limited, his life carefully orchestrated to prevent further discoveries. But no matter what precautions they took, they could not erase the resemblance, nor the knowledge the boy now possessed. For the first time, the hidden secret felt vulnerable, and the estate, once a place of absolute control, teetered on the edge of exposure. The boy now carried the full weight of the secret. Every glance, every whisper, every hidden document reminded him that his life had been carefully controlled by others. And yet, for the first time, he had a choice, if he dared to take it. He spent long nights thinking. Should he confront the master? Should he reveal the truth to the family? Or should he escape, taking knowledge that could destroy them into his own hands? Fear battled with courage. Anger clashed with loyalty. He knew that any misstep could cost him his life, or the life of his mother. At the same time, he felt a strange sense of clarity. His resemblance, once a curse, was now a weapon. The same blood that had made him invisible and vulnerable could give him leverage. If he used it wisely, he began making careful observations, studying routines, noting weaknesses and planning every word and gesture. Every interaction with the family became a test, an opportunity to learn more, to prepare for what would come next. The boy understood something crucial. Knowledge alone was not enough. Patience, timing, and courage would determine whether he survived, or whether the dark secret buried for decades would finally come alive. The moment finally arrived when subtle glances and whispered warnings were no longer enough. The boy's presence had become impossible to ignore. The resemblance, once tolerated through control and distance, was now undeniable to everyone in the house. It began with a small slip. A servant mentioned a letter in passing, a document left unattended. The master's sharp gaze found the boy immediately. The air in the room changed. Every movement, every sound, felt magnified. Every breath carried the weight of suspicion. The master's wife, standing quietly nearby, observed him with cold calculation. Her hands clenched, her jaw tight. She knew that a single misstep could destroy the fragile balance the family had maintained for decades. The boy met the master's eyes for the first time, without lowering his own. It was a moment charged with unspoken truth. In that silent exchange, both recognized the undeniable reality. The boy carried the bloodline of the family. The room felt smaller, the walls closing in, as if the house itself feared the revelation. No one spoke. No one moved. And yet, every heart pounded with the tension of secrets on the verge of exposure. It was not an angry confrontation. It was a silent reckoning, one that would determine who held power and who would continue to live in the shadows. After that tense encounter, the atmosphere of the estate changed forever. No words were exchanged, yet everyone understood that the balance of power had shifted. The master became more calculating. He observed every move the boy made, trying to determine whether he could control the secret or whether it would control him. The wife's subtle hostility intensified. She tightened rules, changed routines, and ensured that the boy was constantly under supervision. Her silent message was clear. The truth must remain buried. Even the master's sons felt the unease. They avoided the boy, their behavior cautious, uncertain, and tinged with fear. What had once been playful rivalry now became a delicate, dangerous dance. The boy, however, was no longer passive. He had seen the fear his existence caused, and he understood that knowledge was power. Every action he took became a test, a careful negotiation between survival and assertion. The secret remained alive, but so did the tension. Every family member, every servant, was now playing a part in a high-stakes game, where one misstep could expose decades of hidden truth. And as the days passed, it became clear. The hidden bloodline was no longer a silent secret. It was a living force, quietly shaping the fate of everyone in the house. Decades of silence, secrecy, and careful control could not erase the truth. The boy, now a young man, carried the blood of the master's family in every vein, a living testament to a secret that had survived through fear, deception, and oppression. Though the family had tried to bury it, the resemblance, the knowledge, and the hidden documents ensured the past could not be fully erased. He was proof that power could not erase nature, that bloodlines, no matter how carefully concealed, always leave traces. The master's family adapted, learning to coexist with the knowledge that the boy, and later, men who knew the truth, would always remind them of what they had tried to hide. And the boy, now aware of his lineage, carried both fear and empowerment. He understood the fragility of secrets and the strength of truth. History often forgets the powerless, but sometimes the powerless carry the most dangerous truths. For decades, the secret remained hidden, but one day it would be remembered, retold, and finally understood. The story of the slave who shared blood with the master's family is not just a story of inheritance or oppression. It is a story of survival, identity, and the unyielding power of hidden truths. A dark secret buried for decades, now revealed in the faces of those who lived it and in the echoes it left behind.